Hello, everybody. Happy New Year, and welcome to episode number 237 of the SoxProspects.com podcast. We're the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox, from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield. I am the executive editor of Sox Prospects, and I am joined, as always, by our director of scouting, a man with whom I was trending on Twitter this week, Ian Kundle. Ian, did you see this?
Did, and I looked up what it was about, and I
Did
don't
it make
understand.
You want to scream?
I don't understand modern culture, so let's just move on.
Because like the other day, I'm just minding my own business, taking a quick break to check Twitter, and Ed Hand, Eddie's our social media guy for the site, retweets like a screen cap that like the number 9 trending topic on Twitter is Chris and Ian, and it's apparently like a pair of guys who were dating and were like TikTok stars, and they broke up. But Ian and I, we are not breaking up. We are going strong into the new year, and we're glad to have you all joining us for our first episode of 2022. We hope the holidays were great for all of you and that you enjoyed bringing in the new year, and they are all staying safe and healthy wherever you're listening to the show. We've got we'll go in depth about all of the news in Major League Baseball. We're going to talk about every single Major League 40-man transaction that's happened since the last episode of the podcast. And actually, let's not delay, Ian. Let's talk about it right now before we do the rest of the introductions. You got the list right there of all the 40-man transactions that have happened since the last episode?
Yeah, it's a very long list of things that has nothing on it.
We're going to go through. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
So that was it. That's our in-depth look at every Major League roster transaction on the 40-man that's happened since last episode. Yeah, the lockout rages on, unfortunately, with little to no end in sight.
Well, that's it. I think we talked about it last, or maybe 2 episodes ago, whenever, that they were never going to talk until January. And I would say now, if I had to guess, I would say it's more likely that they start talking in February. Because at the end of the day, right now, there's just neither side is willing to give in. Mm-hmm. And there's no pressure. Like, they're not missing games. No one's missing a paycheck. The owners aren't missing, gate receipts. So neither side really has any motivation to go to the table. And unfortunately, as much as we'd like to think that both sides would be willing to amicably find, a middle ground for the best of baseball, that's just not how this is likely going to end up.
No,
it's going to be painful. It's probably going to end with maybe missing a few regular season games, but at the end of the day, I think they will get it done eventually. It's just, as we talked about last time, just don't worry about it. It's going to happen when it happens, and there's nothing we can do or say that's going to change it. So just wait. That's all you can do.
Well, let's get we got the bad news out of the way. Let's move on to happier things. There's still plenty to talk about in the system. We're going to talk about our prospect New Year's resolutions. Ian and I have pulled together some New Year's resolutions for prospects in the system, what they will resolve to do in the year 2022 to help raise their prospect stock, to help get them closer to the major leagues. We've got, of course, as always, your emails. Send your emails to podcast@soxprospects.com. We like to talk about what you want to hear about. We've got a number of those that we're going to clear out the inbox. We've got a bunch of really good emails lined up. So thank you all for those of you who sent in emails. And if you haven't yet, send them in for the next episode. Lord knows nothing's happening. So we'd love to answer your questions here on the pod. No question too silly or dumb or anything like that. If it's a basic question, then I'm sure others out there have the same question as well. So go ahead and send in your questions that you want to hear us gab about here on the pod. And of course, if you want to support the show, you can support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. We give certain perks to our patrons on there, our game updates, Patreon game update recordings after we go to games, certain exclusive content when the rankings get updated and things like that. So check it out. Again, it's patreon.com/SoxProspects. But Ian, without further ado, let's jump right into our content portion of this episode for the lovely listeners out there. And so this was an idea that I had kind of had when I was celebrating the new year, falling asleep on my couch, like the old man at heart that I am. And it just seemed like, you know what? It's a new year. What can certain players in the Red Sox organization, I wouldn't even necessarily say farm system, wouldn't necessarily need to limit it to the farm, but organization. What should they be resolving to do in 2022, Ian? And I guess, I don't know, do you want to go first or should I go first with, I've got a list of some guys. I think you have some too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is how realistic do we want to be? Because like, if we want to get like super crazy, I could say like maybe Franchi Cordero could learn to like hit. That would be awesome. Like,
well, let's not do bad. And that's not that this is what you're saying, but it's not like, hey, random senior sign 30th round pick.
Learn to throw 100.
Throw 100. Yeah. No,
no.
It's something specific to that player. Let's go. That is, I mean, it can be broad. It can't be like work on fixing this specific mechanical hitch in your delivery or something. But maybe let me start because it
was your idea. So yeah, it's your construct. So you can go first.
Just to give folks an idea of what I was talking about. There were a few that really stood out to me as really good examples of this. So my first New Year's resolution for the Red Sox farm system is Jarren Duran. Jarren tweaked his swing about 17 times in the like month and a half he was in the majors. Was it even that long?
Yeah. So I actually went down the rabbit hole over Christmas and watched video of like all his different things.
Oh my gosh.
Some of them I forgot.
They're
how
wild. Yeah.
He had one where his hands were separated. Like,
yeah, that's right.
Like,
that's
what
right.
are we?
That's like the guys who putt like overhand.
Yeah, I remember. This is a side story. I used to love watching golf with my grandmother, and I watched like that because I feel like it was mostly like the European players were putting like that. And I remember for like several years when I was very young, I wanted one of those like tall putters just so I could do that. Because I thought it was like the coolest thing ever.
Go to putt golf and putt overhand with your
literally. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. How like it went all the way up to like the top of their chest, and they're like, it was so cool. But anyway, Jarren Duran.
Yeah, just figure out your swing. Like, are you going to be a power hitter? Or are you going to be a contact hitter? And we talked about this with Alex last episode. I don't think he knows yet, and I'm sure he's working on it this offseason. There's no reason to think he isn't, but he needs to figure out what kind of hitter he's going to be. And that's why I have no problem with starting him in AAA and giving him some run there to get something ingrained for him to come up to the major leagues with. And so I think that would be a great New Year's resolution for him. So that's kind of the conceit here is attainable, not literally something they should resolve to do, but that's, what I'm saying. So Ian, I'll toss to you. What's your first Sox farm system or organization? I should say New Year's resolution.
I'm gonna go with what I think is probably, if this could happen, it would be one of the most important developments for the Red Sox heading into 2022. And it's for Tanner Houck to keep throwing his splitter and actually make it usable. Because if Houck can achieve that, it makes them a much more dangerous team pitching wise. Right now, Houck is kind of in that weird ground that we talked about, how we saw him use last year, where he can give you 3 or 4 really good innings, but then once you get second, third time through the order, things get a little dicey and his efficiency and, effectiveness really drops. And right now, the Red Sox, they obviously made those 3 additions 2 additions, we'll call for now. Paxton doesn't really count, I don't think, because he's not going to pitch for the first half of the
2.5.
But, heading into the season right now, the Red Sox rotation is Nady Eovaldi, Chris Sale, Rich Hill, Nick Pivetta, Michael Wacha. I feel good about one person in that rotation. Like, and that's not to say I think the
one.
It's Eovaldi, but
I mean, but it's like last year at this time we thought his contract sucked. Like,
well, exactly. But it's one of those things that, and at the same time, I don't think it's a bad rotation. I actually think that's like it's used like it's. I would say it's an above average major league rotation when you look at what's around the game right now, because there just aren't that many starting pitchers.
Speaking of Houck, how many major league clubs would have him slot in as like their number 4 right now?
A lot of the,
not even 5.
Probably,
there's a number that he would be at no contest. He's in the rotation this coming year.
Yeah. So with that, you have a lot of question marks. Sale's going to have an innings limit. Rich Hill is 55 years old, however old he is. Nick Pivetta is Nick Pivetta. He's fine as a 5th starter, 4th starter. If you ask, or if you're expecting anything more, you're going to be disappointed, most likely. Michael Wacha could be a reliever. He could be a starter if he showed, those pitch changes he made at the end of the season are accurate or are who he is now, that he could be a solid, back end guy. But they're really missing some meat in the middle of the rotation, in my opinion. They kind of have like a solid 2 in Eovaldi. Sale is, I don't know what. And then they have a bunch of back end guys. If Howe can improve his changeup or splitter, I guess, he does have a chance to be a mid rotation starter. The problem is that I just am not sure how realistic that is at this point. We've been saying this for several years. And so if I'm Tanner Houck, that would be my New Year's resolution, is to develop at least an average changeup that I throw, can throw 15 to 20 times a game. Because if that's the case, then my major league career is going to turn out really well, and I'm going to make a lot of money for myself.
Fair. All right. My second New Year's resolution was another one that really came to mind pretty immediately. And that's for Alberto Jimenez to stop slap and running and actually try and hit the ball with some authority. We've talked a number of times on here, Ian, about how Jimenez's 300 batting average this season might have been the most empty 300 batting average for a player in full season ball in some time in the system. And that's not to say like it's different than a non-prospect hitting 300 and we're skeptical it's not going to work higher up. It's that he hit 300 because he's fast enough that low A defenses, especially 2021 low A defenses,
and I
could not throw him out.
I think we emphasized it that I saw low A baseball for 7 games this year, 8 games, whatever it was.
I saw a couple.
The defense was atrocious. It was like Penn League standard, and which makes sense. I mean, they eliminated the Penn League, but it was awful. And yeah, if you're a 70 runner like Jimenez is, if you put the ball in play to the left side and it's not right at a position player, he was getting on base, and with low A scoring, that's a hit. So yeah, I agree. I think that, and the thing I think that the most frustrating with Jimenez is we've seen him do it. There was Instructs 2 years ago when he came out and was hitting tanks in BP. I was down there. I know scouts who were down there who saw it. And that was kind of when the buzz started, was it's like, oh man, like look at this athlete and look at what he can do when he actually swings it. And then just to come out, year after year and just revert back to what you're comfortable with because it can put up, good numbers in the low minors. That's just that at the end of the day, you don't get paid to hit in the low minors. You get paid when you hit in the majors. And what he's doing right now is not going to work for long term in his career.
Exactly.
And he really, as you said, he needs to kind of like think about what kind of player he wants to be. Does he want to be a career minor leaguer? Or does he want to reach his ceiling? And to do that, he really needs to change up that swing and stop slapping the ball. Yeah.
And the other thing, I mean, he also could resolve to become a better defender too, because the defense took a huge step back this year. But to me, the bigger thing almost is
but the defense isn't going to matter if you can't hit.
Right. Exactly. So, that's exactly it. It's a threshold thing as opposed to a how good of a player he could be thing. So what's your second resolution, Ian?
My second one is that it is with Connor Siebold, and he's probably, the Red Sox have some depth in projected for AAA in the rotation with him, Josh Winkowski, Cutter Crawford, even if those guys not necessarily are starters long term. But of that trio, I think Siebold still has the highest ceiling as a starter if he can just get his velocity back and get the feel for his changeup back, because it was just such a weird year for him. I mean, I know we've talked about it, but I saw him in April and he was buzzing like 96, with a good slider. And I assumed that, he's not throwing his changeup because he's working on his slider. And then it was found out that, oh no, he has no feel for his changeup. That's why he's not throwing it. And then, fast forward, he doesn't pitch for 3 months. And then you fast forward, and he comes back and he's 88 to 90 one outing. Then he's 92 to 94 the next outing. Then he's back down at 88 to 91 the next outing. And, by the AFL, he was sitting in the low nine. He was sitting like 89 to 91, 92. And with him, he just doesn't have the margin for error to pitch at that velocity. His stuff's not good enough to be throwing a below average fastball. And he needs to get that velocity back and be back at, he doesn't need to be 94 to 96, but he needs to be 92 to 94 in order to, even not even reach a ceiling, but even, reach that, 60th percentile outcome.
So it's almost, so the resolution is get his velo back, or
we'll stay healthy and get your velo back, because
it's almost it's also get the feel for your changeup back.
Well, that is the other thing, but you said I could only pick one. So, but it's just, if he can do that, like he did make his breaking ball took a step forward last year. And that was the question heading into the season. We thought it's just new questions arose. And so, I still think there's a potential, back end major league starter in there. It's just, he went from someone who I thought had a reasonably high floor to now there's a very wide range of outcomes with him.
Yeah, there's a potential 4A guy
Yeah.
there, no question.
Yeah.
No question.
Whereas before I thought like worst case, you're looking at a guy who could be a reliever because you just have
Right.
fastball change up, be a 2 inning reliever. And that's fine.
Sure. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right. So I think for my final, I'll let you do your third, Ian, because I'm sporting and I'll figure out which of the ones I have written here based on that. Cause I don't want to I know we're kind of running low on ideas here and I will defer to you on your third New Year's resolution.
My
We'll
third one
emails.
is actually going to be a little bit of a wild card, and it's going to be Ronaldo Hernandez. I would love for him to learn how to catch because
okay.
His arm is actually decent-ish, and I
it's a
do
good
like
arm. It's like a plus arm.
Yeah, yeah.
At least above average.
I would say, like it's like a 55, 60. The problem is he has like a slowish release, but
okay.
But his catching is really bad, and I like the bat, and that's the thing is, I don't know, like I don't think he's like an all-star. The bat's it's not like a plus hit tool or anything, but he has raw power, and even though his approach is pretty bad, he somehow makes enough contact to like be usable with the power. And with the bar for catcher so low, if he can just figure it out, framing wise and receiving, then he has at least, backup catcher potential. And I do think one of the underrated kind of like question marks for the Red Sox long term is what they're going to do at catcher. And it's something that they obviously
we have an email that gets into
that.
Do
we?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they tried to address it as we learned, this offseason with the Jacob Stallings trade discussions. And I just think that looking at the options in the system, there isn't really anyone that stands out to me as a long-term answer. But if Hernandez can figure out how to catch, then he would probably jump to the top of that list for me.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And it's fun. I mean, well, we could talk about the Stallings trade when we get to that email, but yeah, I mean, the thing with Hernandez too, is that it's a good bet. Tell me if you disagree with it. It's not a good bat that will play wherever. It is a good bat for catcher.
Yeah, no, it's not. And let me first say also, I don't understand how his swing works at all. It's one of the weirdest swings I've ever seen.
Right.
He looks like a lumberjack at the beginning. He's like chopping down and up. It's very strange, but it works for him. And it's, he can get into his power. I think he hit like 16 home runs or something this year. But yeah, it's good at catcher. It's not good like at first base. It's not like
16. Yeah.
It's not like Tyler Soderstrom or like, remember when Bryce Harper and Will Myers were catchers? Like they're just like, no, these guys rake. Like we need to get them off catcher. He's someone who needs to be a catcher in order for it to play.
It's not even like Ryan LeVarn way where it might work elsewhere. You're not sure, but it would be worth seeing if catcher really doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's more like, remember when we used to talk about Blake Swihart? I don't want to compare Hernandez to Blake Swihart. That's not what I'm saying here, but he has the potential to be a good hitting catcher. He does not, like, that's when they moved him to left field and it was like, what are you doing? Like, he doesn't have that kind of bat that he will be a good hitting left fielder. Same with Hernandez. I don't think moving to first base or DH would work for him, especially because he's got a potential above average arm. Like he just needs to receive.
No, it's the receiving. It's, the blocking balls in the dirt, his mobility, he's not a natural, like the defensive side of the game doesn't come naturally to him. It seems like he really has to think about it.
Right.
Whereas like there are certain catchers when you see it, and I think, that they know before the pitch is even, when the pitch is halfway to home plate, they're already getting down to block the ball in the dirt, or they're already, changing their glove position in order to frame it. Like he's not one of those guys.
Right. All right. So I guess for my final one, Ian, I'll go with another guy who's kind of in that same sort of area prospect wise. And that's Chris Murphy. Chris Murphy had a very good year this year, but he has drastic left-right hand splits. For all of the success he had this year.
You have them up. We should say them because I remember when I told you this, you were floored. Like
he was death to left-handers.
But they were like, they're not just left-right splits. He doesn't give up anything to lefties and gets absolutely bombed by righties.
He gets murdered by right-handed hitting. It's crazier than you would think. Why is Baseball Reference not coming up? I guess MILB will have the splits now. Let me pull it up. So obviously Murphy is a left-handed hitter. He split his year between High A Salem and High A Greenville, dollar in the cookie jar, High A Greenville and Double A Portland. And here, his splits for the season were as follows. Okay. Against right-handers, he gave up a 141 ERA, 278 batting average against, did strike out 55 guys, but gave up 52 hits in 46 2/3, but innings pitch is a weird.
Did you mean a 141 whip?
141 whip, yes.
You
Did I
said
say ERA?
Yeah.
Okay. No, the ERA was, I mean, there's no ERA for a split, but gave up all 17 of his home runs to right-handed hitters.
And that's the big one to me. You know,
all
you can't,
17,
you cannot be giving
which
up,
is too high generally.
Yes. You can't be giving up 17 home runs. And that's, yeah.
He gave up 17 home runs.
And what was it, like
68 innings?
Oh, 68. Oh, geez. I went way over. I was going to say like 100 innings.
60, no, yeah, 68 and a third innings, I think. Yeah,
it was.
Because he only made 14 starts.
And then it was
because they lost April.
Yeah, then it was 4 and 33 innings with because I knew it was 21 home runs and about 100 innings. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. Meanwhile, against left-handers. So right-hander, 55 Ks to 14 walks isn't bad. Against left-handers, 141 batting average against, 0.92 whip, 26 strikeouts to 9 walks. Walks still a shade high. No home runs. 10 hits.
The lefties couldn't square him up at all.
No.
It was just a lot of weak contact versus righties.
So he needs to figure out how to pitch to right-handed hitters is really
the problem with him, and I think this is I think a lot of it stems from his release. He comes from that low 3/4 arm slot from it just gives righties a really good look at it. You know, when you're coming from that slot, that's just a very comfortable hitting slot for right-handed hitters. And when your secondary pitches are pretty inconsistent, which his are, I just don't know if, he doesn't have that weapon to get a righty out,
right,
given the look they're getting. And that's something that, they're going to have to figure out, whether it be, tweaking the delivery to add some deception or taking a step forward with his changeup.
And look, for a guy with his numbers, we should be talking about the 23 walks and 68 and a third innings. And that being the resolution is throw more strikes, because he did strike 81 guys out in 68 and a third innings. But
then you even go up to Portland. He had 47 strikeouts and 33. So it's like he faced, facing better hitters. He was still striking a ton of guys out, but he walked 13 in 33 innings.
Yeah. So, I mean, his thing is just, I will take the walks as long as right-handers aren't just squaring him up with consistency.
Yeah. Because if
it's walking, 68 innings in Greenville. Okay. So the splits I was getting were just Greenville.
Yeah.
That's frustrating.
Here,
I want everyone. Blah. Darn you, MILB. This is fascinating content, I'm sure. Here we go. Minors, game logs, and splits. Okay, so for the season, then it's more of the same. So against right-handers.
Yeah, I have them too.
I have it up here. Okay, I'll just do OPS. Lefties had a 401 OPS. Righties had a 914 OPS.
Yeah.
86 strikeouts to 25 walks against righties, which in 314 plate appearances. So 86 divided by 314 equals 27% K rate, which is pretty solid. But lefties, he had 42 Ks in 110 plate appearances. So he had a 38% K rate.
Yeah.
Like, he was death to lefties.
Well, then that's it. Yeah. Righties, 277, 342, 572, lefties, 134, 236, 165. And that's what we're talking about, is lefties
all
just can't
21 home runs.
Lefties just don't square him up. He gave up 3 doubles. That's it. No home runs, no triples versus, against righties. He gave up 21 homers. He gave up 40 extra. He gave up 40 extra base hits against righties this year and 3 against lefties. And that was in, he had a little
3 times as many,
a little under 3 times as many paid appearances, but still that's a good one.
Yeah. So,
and that's why a lot of people have Murphy pegged as reliever.
Right. Because I mean, if double A righties are squaring them up like that, major league righties are gonna do some damage. So, but I mean, if there's stuff there.
The stuff is
Right.
very good. It's just, yeah, that's a major.
Throw more strikes and figure out right-handers is the big one for me for Murphy.
Yeah.
So anyway, should we move on? I think that was good for that segment, unless you want to do one more. But
no, I think that's good.
Okay. So moving on then to our emails again. Y'all
no. We have one bit of news.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. What's the
international signing deadline? In 6 days.
Is in 6 days. That's right. Ben.
So this is our official preview of all of the information that we know about these players, which
it's very little, precious little. Here's the thing, and Ben Badler a few years ago went to this, and I think it makes a ton of sense. Is Ben Badler of Baseball America is, to me, Ian, the authority on the international amateur free agent market.
Yeah, it's him and Jesse Sanchez. I think they're the only two really who cover it in depth.
Yeah. Badler for years now has not ranked the international amateur free agents because of a few things. One, these guys are 16. Two is that there's an information asymmetry because these guys agree to deals when they're 14, 15.
Yeah. Well, and it just because they got the highest bonus doesn't mean anything. Like we saw it, and I think we had a couple of great examples these last couple of years. Like Kevin Maiton was supposedly this like generational talent that caused, several Braves front office members to lose their careers. And he's atrocious. He's absolutely horrific. And he got like a $4 million bonus or something. And same with like last year, Robert Pawson, he was supposedly the big shortstop signing for the Athletics, and he could really defend, but he might not be able to hit at all. And that's why it's like trying to rank them, I think, on talent is it's too difficult at this point. You have guys getting hit in, you have guys, so much can change for these players.
And then there's what I always say to people who are like, the Red Sox aren't in, and they're not this year, in on any of these like $3, $4, $5 million signings. Some teams, I would argue the Red Sox included, have gotten very good about getting more bang for their buck and spreading that money around. The Red Sox last year, their top bonus went to Miguel Blaze, right? That was last year, right? Yeah. And his bonus was 1.5 million, and no one else got more than 850K. And only one guy got that much. Only two guys got more than 550K.
Well, and the one thing is you have to remember is that the international market landscape has changed because the way they can't
hard cap.
Yeah, hard cap, and they can't trade for anything right now. It's not like they could a couple of years ago when they could trade for more cap, or before that when it was a free for all.
Yep.
So the numbers are going to be different, especially with a team like the Red Sox who get lumped into the lowest bonus pool amount because they're not a revenue sharing team and they're not like all that stuff.
It's just revenue sharing is, I think.
Oh, is it just that? Okay.
Yeah. Because there's 3 tiers.
And they're in the lowest tier in terms of
it's like revenue sharing. I forget the other piece of it, but it's not. I thought it was based market on
size. I thought it was market size or something.
Might be market size. I think it's like revenue sharing. And did you get a competitive balance? Oh, you know what it is? It's based on where your competitive balance pick is.
Okay. Yeah. But there's you could be right, but it doesn't matter where it's not a standings based thing.
Right. Exactly. And that's because competitive balance picks are not standings based. There's like 12 teams that it's based on market size and revenue. And like, it can be as many as like 15, but it never is that many because there are always teams that are in both conditions. And it's like 1 year you get an A and 1 year you get a B. And it's like the year you get an A, you get a certain amount of IFA money. The year you get a B, you get a certain amount of IFA money. Anyways, the Red Sox are never going to get that. So, and you don't necessarily get it when you trade for the pick. It's two separate things that you get. One is the pick and you can trade the pick. But anyway, so the Red Sox are usually capped. Like last year, they were capped at 5.348 million. This year, the Red Sox are tied to 2 players who are in Ben Badler's top 50 on his international board. That's Framy De Leon and Fraley Encarnacion. Both are shortstops. Both, it looks like, are probably going to get about $1 million based on how he lined them up. He talked about the number 36 prospect is expected to sign for at least $1 million.
Yeah, because he does it by bonus amount. So.
He does it by bonus amount, exactly. Yeah. So De Leon is ranked 32nd, Encarnacion is ranked 37th. Encarnacion is the offensive-minded infielder who might move over to third. De Leon is one of the best defensive shortstops in the class. And probably going to leave it there for now.
Well, yeah, and if you look at it, like just because they're shortstops now doesn't mean anything. If you look, pretty much everyone on the list is a shortstop or a center fielder.
Yeah, it's all shortstops, outfielders, catchers, and pitchers.
Yeah, there's no, that because that's just how it is in the Dominican. Mm-hmm. When those guys sign, they're the best players on their teams, or the best players coming from their respective Buscon, and they're always playing up the middle. So
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So, and we'll see. I mean, because the thing too, I mean, you look at last year's Red Sox signings. The top two guys, Miguel Blaze and Ender Solera, are the two guys that we have ranked the highest. But then like Jedickson Paez at $450K was a good signing. We're hearing things about, just going down the list, the Curaçaoan pitcher, Yisrael Burnett. Mm-hmm. Who were some of the other guys who were pretty good? I guess they might have been from the prior year.
A lot of them were from the prior year.
Yeah, I mean, the prior year guys, Joe Stinson Garcia was a $350K signing. Calvin Diaz, a $300K signing. Nathaniel Cruz was a $200K signing. Even Chacon at $900K was the top guy, but it's still only $900K.
Yeah, Miguel Ugueto at $10K was decent down in the FCL last year.
All right, yeah, and he was the 2018
and then
signing period.
Oh yeah, no, he was 2019-20. Looking at it right now.
Oh yeah, he was. Oh no kidding! Wow.
And
so he got up to DGCL quick.
Yeah, okay. But he was also old. He was like 18 when he signed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's Luis Perales, though, I think is the best example. 75K. He's one of the more interesting arms in the system.
And I almost picked him as a New Year's resolution guy of like, just get on the mound, because he didn't pitch this much this year.
Yeah.
He was hurt this year. And apparently, from what we heard, they were just being extremely cautious with him. It's not like he got TJ or anything. But
no.
Anyway, so
hopefully we'll have some. We can discuss the international. We'll discuss more once we know the signings and once they start rolling in your stuff.
Once we get a little more information, and maybe we can find.
But that date is still, even because it's not related to the 40-man roster. That date is the 15th is when those guys can start signing.
So we'll have a list of guys. They'll sign maybe episode. Like 10-ish.
Yeah, I would say like over that first week. Yeah,
over the first week. Yeah.
I mean, you look at last January, they signed 13 last January. So yeah, I would say 10 to 15 is probably.
Well, if they're top 13, I think then there's a few more guys who signed for like 10K.
Yeah, but I was just looking at the date.
Right. Well, January. No, but we don't sort that. If you're looking at our page, we don't sort it by date anymore. We sort it by bonus.
Oh, no. I know. I was just running through I didn't count one of them. Okay. Yeah. It was
because Renita and Mota were down there in January.
Okay. It was 15. They did 15 in January. Yeah.
But a couple of them were pretty small bonuses of 10K, which that's the funny thing. I was like, what? Yeah. Anyway, we'll see what happens with the signing deadline date. Anything else we need to get to before we get to emails, Ian? Now you've got me nervous that I'm forgetting something else. I guess, were there any minor league free agent signings? I don't think there were since our last episode. Oh, Johan Mieses is back.
Big one.
The Worcester Red Sox coaching staff was announced on December 13th. Have we really not done this since the 13th? I guess we just didn't talk about it. I think is what it was.
We didn't talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Chad Tracy, who is not the former Diamondbacks infielder, which when it was announced, I assumed it was the same Chad Tracy. It is not that Chad Tracy, has been named the Worcester manager. I was a little surprised, Ian, because I had assumed that someone was coming in from Tampa. I guess I didn't have any reason necessarily to think that, but
I mean, I guess this one makes sense because as a shout out Chris Cotillo, that I guess Cora, like there's a connection because Jim Tracy, who is this Tracy's father, the ex-MLB manager, was considered for bench coach in 2017 before going to Renicky.
Okay.
So there's some sort of connection between Cora and the Tracy family, it seems. So
I
wonder if that might have played a part in this one.
That's interesting. So this Chad Tracy had been a manager in the Angels organization for the last 7, or he was in the organization for the last 7 years. Managed low A and high A, and the last 4 seasons he was their minor league field coordinator, which means he's like the roving infielder coach essentially, or roving defensive coach, essentially for the organization. Again, his father is Jim Tracy. He is not the Chad Tracy who played MLB for 9 years. It's funny. The release talks about how he coached Wayne Gretzky's son in 2015, as well as Sean Newcomb, who went on to pitch for the Atlanta Braves. He apparently coached Daniel Nava briefly in 2016, as well as Mike Trout while he rehabbed. Woot. The Red Sox also announced that Jose David Flores is the new bench coach in AAA, essentially replacing Bruce Crabb. He's Puerto Rican. He managed the Puerto Rican national team in the Pan Am Games and Baseball World Cup. He was on the coaching staff for Team Puerto Rico in the 2013 World Baseball Classic. He's also managed in the Cleveland system. And let's see. It doesn't say what he had been doing recently, but he's been, coaching for a long time. He was a middle infielder and reached AA in his own playing career. Rich Gedman comes back as hitting coach, and Paul Abbott comes back as pitching coach. No surprise, the organization loves both of them. So, and also they announced that Mike Montville, who was the nebulous quote unquote coach at the level, the Red Sox have a coach at each level, which is basically kind of like a coaching apprentice type situation thing. He has been promoted to assistant hitting coach, the first such full-time position in Red Sox AAA history. So Red Sox AAA coaching staff has been set. Chad Tracy joins such luminaries as Billy McMillan, Kevin Bowles, Gary DiSarcina, Arnie Byler, Torey Lavulo, Ron Johnson. Let's see, Ken Maka, future Major League manager, Buddy Bailey. Rico Petrocelli was the AAA manager for a year. Butch Hobson, blah. Johnny Pesky. Joe Morgan was their manager for a while. I forgot about that. But it's kind of funny. They went through a period of I guess Johnny Pesky only managed for part of the 1990 season. Butch Hobson managed for a year. Rico Petrocelli managed there for a year. Way later, Torey Lavulo only did a year. I guess the people have come through. DiSarcina only did a year. I think then he went into the booth, right? Or did he go up to Boston? I think he might have gone to Boston first.
He became the bench coach or something.
Yeah, that's what happened with Lavulo. Was he went up to Boston?
Yeah,
because they brought him up when was that when Francona was having, or was that when Farrell was having issues? They brought him up.
Yeah. I don't remember.
I think it was when Farrell underwent his cancer treatment that he was the manager.
That sounds right.
Yeah. We should also mention, of course, the Minor League Rule 5 draft. We almost forgot about that. It happened before our last episode, but we didn't talk about it because we had Alex on the show last episode. And Ian, the Red Sox drafted 2 players in this year's Minor League Rule 5 draft, including the annual New York Yankees system Minor League Rule 5 pick. In the first round, the Red Sox selected, was Lambright first? I think Lambright was first, right?
Was, yeah.
Yeah, left-handed pitcher out of the Kansas City Royals system, Austin Lambright, a 26-year-old who spent 2021 on the injured list. He missed the entire season, but had spent 2019 split between low A and high A. Pure relief guy out of Abilene Christian, who then transferred to Central Oklahoma, which is a JUCO, I believe. But yeah, drafted by the Royals in the 10th round in 2018. He has a twin brother who was drafted by Colorado, had Tommy John in 2015, low bonus senior sign in 18. Rule 5 lottery ticket, Ian. What do we know about Austin Lambright?
Yeah, mid-90s fastball, really high spin rate slider, kind of like a slurvy breaking ball. Death against lefties in 2019. Lefties hit 065, 232, 087 against him. So they had 3 hits and 56 plate appearances.
That's not good.
Righties, actually, he was good against righties too, 240, 333, 318, only gave up 1 home run. Just seems like health's been an issue, but the stuff is intriguing. He is old though. He's 27 already. So on the older side for prospects, but an intriguing, arm to take a look at with no real risk. And then Brian Keller is a 27-year-old righty who was last year in AAA with the Yankees, 55 innings, 65 strikeouts, 46 walks, good fastball, but really bad control. Secondary pitches, work in progress. He's a kind of it seems like more of a depth arm.
Yeah, he's a high minors guy. Like I said, the annual pick out of the New York Yankees system. The walks are interesting, but I mean, there's strikeouts. So go figure. The Red Sox taking a flyer on him. So a couple of interesting arms, not guys we're really going to necessarily talk a ton about, but who knows? I mean, beginning of this past year, Tyreek Reed was a big thing. Caleb Ort was a thing during the year. Reynel Espinal was a past minor league Rule 5 pick, and he played in the majors for the Red Sox this year. So you never know where these guys will come from, but I think it may amplify it a little bit at the time due to the fact that there was no Major League Rule 5 draft, but still kind of interesting. So, all right. Anywho, that's the news. Let's get to emails, Ian.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Number of emails. Again, it's podcast@soxprospects.com. We want to talk about what y'all want to hear about. So hit us up. We appreciate it. Our first question comes from Gabe. It says, Chris and Ian, I hope you're both well. Thank you for the updates and entertainment this year. I look forward to your analysis as the offseason heats up. It says, I have an interesting question for the podcast, which I've actually asked before, although it was years ago. Two of the answers were Yoan Moncada and Javi Guerra, if memory serves. If that gives you any idea as to how long ago it was, I think it's a good one for whenever there's a lull in news or transactions. Lord knows that's right now. And you can go as wide or as narrow as you would like. But who are the Sox prospects that you'd grade the highest, present or future, in each of the traditional scouting categories, preferably those in the top 30-ish of the rankings to preserve interest? This may be also fun for each pitch type, e.g. Houck's slider, Seabold's changeup, et cetera, et cetera. Have a good week, Gabe. Gabe actually sent this in a long time ago, but this is one of the emails we've been kind of saving. Ian, you've kind of done a rundown, so I will just pitch to you for this one. Who do you got for each? I guess let's start with the traditional 5 tools for position players, and then we'll move to pitches.
Yeah, sure. It's a good question. It is definitely a fun offseason discussion. And I'm going to guess that it was Moncada was probably hit and Guerra was arm, I would guess. Maybe
Guerra was probably defensive player generally.
He
might have been that and arm.
Well, his arm, he had like a 70 arm, so it could have been that too. But
I think it might have been both.
But yeah, so for right now, I think that there's a couple like no-brainers. So the first one is the hit tool. Like it's Nick York. Yeah. There's just not even a question. And then similarly with power, it's Tristan Casas. And I think you could make that one is a little close. You can make a case for Blaze Jordan.
That's close. Yeah.
But it depends how you want to break it down. Cause I just think that I'm going to go. Yeah. I think Casas is going to end with more game power because I think his hit tool has a better chance of actualizing. Okay. So, excuse me. I think his hit tool has a better chance of allowing his power to actualize is what I meant to say. But yeah, so Casas and Jordan are the two there. Moving to run, I would say that there's 2 guys I would have, Alberto Jimenez and David Hamilton.
Because you're not counting Duran anymore?
No.
Are you grading him as a 60 now?
And Duran's like 65-ish. Okay. He's in that ballpark, but I think Hamilton and Jimenez are faster than him.
Okay. But it's David Hamilton, for those who forgot, being one of the guys acquired in the Hunter Renfroe trade.
Correct. And he is a 70 runner from what I've been told by sources. So yeah. So he gets in that little group. They don't have like a pure 80 runner. They right now it's mostly 70. I mean, not many systems do. But glove, I have I think the first one though is Ceddanne Rafaela. Because I've seen him play a plus defense at like 4 positions. So that's kind of fun. So I'd say Rafaela. And then I think a honorable mention goes to Tyler McDonough. He's very good in center field. I was very impressed with what I saw last year, but I think Rafaela, and I think Rafaela was the minor league defender of the year last year.
The system. Yep.
So that kind of makes sense there. And then arm was surprisingly difficult. We were talking about this before, and they don't really have anyone who I would say has like the oblique arm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Off the top of my head. So I went with, I like Brainer Bonassi's arm. I think it's, a plus arm over there. I think that's his arm is probably the best from what I can remember. Rafael has a decent arm too, but I think that, it's one of those guys down in the low minors, which was interesting to me because I was going through it. It's like, there aren't as many, big arms in the system as I thought.
It also might by default be Marcelo Meyer on either of those defensive ones.
Fair, because I've never seen I'm just usually going by people I've seen, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean Meyer, if he's a legit shortstop, he easily could be the best glove. I don't know that I'd put him over Rafaela because Rafaela can, especially because he can do it at multiple positions, but he also might be the default arm too. So,
yeah.
Pitchers. What's up, pitches?
Fastball. There's a few guys who are really hard. There's only one that I saw hit 100 miles an hour last year. And so that makes him the default choice. It's Jacob Wallace. Under the radar. I mean, I think I've sung his praises a lot, and I'm very interested to see what he does this year because I think in terms of pure relief types, he has among the highest ceilings of anyone in the system if he doesn't get hurt or throw strikes, because those are two big question marks given his delivery. But, when he's on, he's 90. I've seen him up to 100, or I think like almost 101. So yeah, he's like 98 to 100 when he's on. Best slider, excluding Tanner Houck, because he's obviously graduated, Brian Mata. I think people forget how good his slider was in that, at the alternate site last year before he got hurt, obviously this spring.
Well, even the year before when he first started throwing.
Yeah. So that was a really good pitch. Changeup, I had two, Brian Bayo and Brandon Walter. Bayo's is better, but I thought it would give a shout out to Walter and Wilkelman Gonzalez kind of, is making the podium for that pitch. Bayo's changeup's really good. It's, potential 60, maybe even a 65 pitch. He's very exciting. And he's someone, as we get closer to the season, I think we'll talk more about, because he's the type of arm they haven't really had positioned to come up in the second half and potentially be an impact reliever if they want to go that route. And, his stuff could really play in that role if that's something they choose to do. Curveball, I had a couple. I had Eduardo Bizardo and Jay Groom. Groom would have been the easy choice if his curveball was back to its levels it was pre-injury, but I just don't think it's there yet. Bizardo's got a really nice curveball. Cutter Crawford is another one. There isn't as curveball, I would say, of these secondary pitches is the weakest one in the system, in my opinion now, if that makes sense. I think that the high-end sliders and changeups in the system are a lot better than the high-end curveballs. And then Cutter, Thad Ward. That was a pretty easy one because his cutter's really good.
I would have put Ward in the honorable mentions for slider too. He's got a really good slider. And the thing with Ward is we're going to have to see what the stuff looks like when he comes back.
Yeah, it's the big question. Problem. Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I love that list. I don't really have any quibbles with any of it. May have thrown a couple of those names to you while we were figuring it out before too. So, I like the list. Great question. And we appreciate it. So thanks for the email. Gabe, we appreciate it, as I mentioned a number of times. Our next email comes from frequent emailer and friend of the pod, Harrison, who says, quick question, as the AFL season ended, did Tristan Casas exceed the 17 games he had hit consecutively, or was that the final number? I believe he was one game off tying someone's AFL record. The reason I read this, I don't know whether he did or not, but another guy had an 18-game hit streak this season, which might have been what you were hearing about. I think the record is like 22 games. So he wasn't about to break a record or anything like that. And I certainly didn't hear about him doing so. So that's the situation there. Our next email comes from Adam. And he says, hey, Chris and Ian, hopefully a fun question. Josh Ockamy is probably gone with his deal being up and Tristan Casas arriving in Worcester. Ockamy has always been a guy that buys in with the team and community really well. And I'm going to interject here. Actually, it's kind of funny. This could not be more prescient, frankly, in terms of a question, because in December, Ockamy was doing like community stuff with the Worcester Red Sox, which made me wonder, like, does that mean he has resigned? And I actually reached out and they're like, no, he's just that good of a guy that he came up and did this community outreach stuff with us, which is bonkers. Like, he's doing it with a team he's not even signed with right now. So that's a great example from Adam here. But continuing with the email, Worcester loved him this year, and the guy's love for baseball is clear to see. Who are some of the other guys in the past that maybe haven't been the best of prospects, but loved the game and were just really great guys to have in the clubhouse and community? Thanks, Adam. Ian, this is kind of a tough one because a lot of that we don't see based on what we're looking for, right? Some guys, though, you do hear about. One guy that came to mind as I read this was Marcus Wilson. And you could tell from kind of the outpouring when he got dealt. I'm trying to remember who he got dealt for. Do you recall? I can't remember the trade.
Marcus Wilson, how they got him?
No, traded him away.
Oh,
well, you look it up if you can. The reason I mention is like every single one of his teammates and just people who barely knew him almost in the system, it seemed, reacted to
I thought he just got claimed off waivers.
Oh, he got claimed off waivers. That's what it was. When he got DFA'd.
Yeah.
But you could just tell the effect he had in the clubhouse because everyone loved playing with him. And that's something that we'd even mentioned before that, is that you could tell he loves playing the game, can tell he's a favorite among his teammates. Yeah. So that's one that comes to mind. Another one that came to mind for me was outfielder Peter Hissy, who was a while back,
you're going way back.
That's a pull.
Fourth round pick out of Virginia or Delaware. Pennsylvania.
He
Delaware.
was
He was
committed to
going to
Virginia.
UVA. Yeah,
Yes.
outfielder. Yeah, got $1 million.
Got $1 million. Yeah, and didn't pan out in terms. I think he didn't even make AAA. Honestly, I think he topped out at AA. But in his off season would go to like, I forget where he went. I think he went on like kind of a mission trip of a sort. He was not in like a Mormon mission, but just like um, a trip down to, I think, South America to help do charity work down there. And I remember talking to him about it in spring training. And every time I saw him after that, he would make a point to say hi to me. And it was just a nice guy, really well liked in the clubhouse from what I understood. So that's another name that came to mind. I'm sure
I have a good one.
Okay.
Mike McCarthy.
Oh yeah. Michael McCarthy, the swingman pitcher who was in Portland for like 3 years.
Correct. He was very involved with a lot of charitable endeavors like Baseball Miracles and some other ones like that. Really active in the community. And I believe he now works for the Twins. He's, I want to say, like a roving pitching instructor or something for them.
That would make sense.
But he was, I know someone
Padres.
San Diego Padres. I think he was with the Twins before.
Yeah. According to his LinkedIn, he's with the Padres.
There you go. But he was, I know he's someone who was very active in the community. He was very well liked around the team.
Well, the thing with McCarthy too is, so he went to Cal State Bakersfield, which like didn't have a program previously. Like he and a bunch of guys literally built program.
It was like a club team.
Before, it started as a club team. I think it was eventually varsity, but like, he had been with the Twins until 2021, and he just got hired by the Padres as their AAA pitching coach.
That's what it is.
But he like helped start their program basically while at Cal State Bakersfield. So like, to the point that him and like his teammates would like do the field after games and stuff. Like they didn't have a staff to do that sort of thing. And he's still with Baseball Miracles. But yeah, that's another great pull. He definitely won the Portland Sea Dogs have like a community service award or something. And he's definitely won it at least once, if not multiple times for them. So absolutely great call. So appreciate that one. But yeah, thanks for the question. I think it was that Adam. Yeah, Adam. That's a good call. Always good to kind of highlight those guys on the show. Our next email comes from Josh. We're going to save your email again further for an episode later on, the fantasy draft idea. That's a good one. We are not ignoring it. Our next email comes from John B. And he says, Chris Ian, enjoyed your analysis of the Noah Song situation on the last pod, which was 2 podcasts ago. It got me thinking, was Dave Dombrowski's decision to draft Noah Song in the 4th round a mistake? And do you think Chaim Bloom would have viewed Song's draft value differently? Presumably Song's trade value right now is 0, or at least closer to that of a 50th ranked prospect than a 19th. I know some folks viewed the pick as a steal in 2019, but the downside was always that he never plays baseball or that he doesn't play again for years. John B. Thanks for the question, John. First of all, hard disagree on the pick being a mistake. First of all, I think you might be slightly overvaluing what a 4th round pick is worth. Getting a player with Song's upside in the 4th round in a vacuum is an excellent value play. And as you mentioned, it's not like they didn't know at the time that he might not play baseball.
Well, yeah, that was the only reason he was available there.
And he was considered a high 1st, early 2nd round talent at the time.
He was 22nd on perfect games, 65th on Baseball America, and 86th on MLB. But I believe the latter 2 factored in.
They factored in the service thing, yeah. So based on pure talent, that's what they all said at the time. It was
like a late first, early second, yeah. And and I think the underrated part of that pick is it's not just the talent you're getting there; it's the fact that they signed him for $100,000. That's
what I was going to get to.
The Red Sox have always taken senior signs at some point in the 4th to 10th rounds in these drafts, and they got probably the most talented senior sign in years for $100,000 like that in the current, and save that money that they could then float towards signing Cameron Cannon or someone, not Cameron Cannon, excuse me, towards signing like Brock Bell or Brennan Salucci, Blake Lubier, like the other guys later on. So I think that, it's not a waste of a pick. It was a very good pick. And I think it's the same type of pick that Chaim Bloom would have made. It's just, there's nothing like they knew this risk at the time. And even if he doesn't ever play it, even if he doesn't ever throw a baseball again, it was still a fine pick at the time. The 4th round picks rarely turn out anyway. You're getting a player of his talent there, and what we saw, in that first season was a great piece of work, even if he doesn't ever play again.
And I got to say, Reed Grignani, for a guy who was an amateur scout for 1 year, getting Song and Brandon Walter that's a hell of a year. For not getting the first rounder. Like
Brandon Walter, 26th round pick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like that's
another senior sign, by the way, $35K.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just a heck of a year for him. And yeah, I mean, Song, especially because again, he signed for the 100K and they knew, I mean, that's just great scouting, knowing that you can get him and spread that money around is
exactly
tremendous value. And the thing is too, they didn't even know how good of a pitcher he was going to be. Song didn't know his changeup was as good as it turned out to be because he didn't throw it in college. So
because if you look like in 2016, they signed, they drafted Devlin Granberg in the 6th round, senior sign, gave him $40K. Like the year before, Zach Schellinger got underslot in the 6th round. Jake Thompson got underslot in the 4th round. Like the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, they've gone underslot a lot. And Song is by far the most talented guy they've drafted in those rounds. Like,
he's the most talented guy they drafted that year. Full stop.
Yeah. Because I mean, going back, Walter.
Oh, well, yeah, true.
If I had to rank the players from that draft, he was the most talented, but I would say of terms of, prospect status now. I mean, you have Walter, you have Chris Murphy, you have Lugo, and then there's a pretty substantial drop off. Yeah, there's a massive drop off.
Yeah, Walter. I forgot Murphy was that draft.
Then it's like Bradley Blaylock, Cannon, guys like
Salucci.
that. Yeah.
Yep. Fair. Dylan Spake, who's okay. Yeah. Anyway, okay, cool. Our next question comes from Jeff. He says, "Thank you for all you do with the excellent website and podcast. I found it interesting that the Red Sox were rumored to be in on the Jacob Stallings trade. We keeping you up? You good? All right. Given that Vasquez and Plawecki..."
Chris was talking to his cat there, for the record.
That's true. Exactly. Given that Vasquez and Plawecki's contracts are up at the end of 2022, that would have made a lot of sense to fill a catching need for beyond 2022. Given that Heim is likely looking to fill needs for 2022 as well as beyond, what areas of the roster do you see as needs for 2023, given players with expiring contracts in 22, that may inform the rest of the moves this offseason? Thanks, and go Sox. Jeff. Thanks for the email, Jeff. That's a good question. I'm trying to pull up our future roster projections on the website. And this is, without any outside moves happening. There's a few spots. I mean, as you mentioned, catcher is one of them, because right now our 2023 projected catcher is Connor Wong, and who knows? It's the catchers are Wong and Ronaldo Hernandez. So who knows if that's how that's going to play out. But if you look at, second base is something they're going to address this offseason. I just realized Hunter Renfroe is still on here. Let me make a note.
We need to update that page. This page needs to be updated. But yeah, second base, DH might have to be addressed because JD Martinez is a free agent. Nate Eovaldi's a free agent, so they'll probably need another starter. They have a lot of work to do heading into 2023. And I think it's tough to look ahead that far when the 2022 offseason is barely, has barely happened. We had a couple moves, but the majority of the stuff has not happened from the 2022 offseason. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens when they come back from the lockout in that, abbreviated period. Mm-hmm. What happens with the Red Sox? Because I do think they have moves to make. I mean, heck, we even had the stuff this week with the Suzuki, the right fielder.
Right. Yeah.
There's gonna be moves. They're gonna add a right fielder. They're gonna have to add another infielder. They're gonna have to add some relievers. So I think it's hard to kind of assess what they need for 2023 when we don't even have a clear picture of what 2022's roster is going to look like.
Yeah, the really obvious ones are second base and outfield, and it's like they could address those this offseason, easily. With one fell swoop of a signing. So, but the starting pitching, everyone always needs relief pitching. The starting pitching actually looks like it's in a pretty good spot. For a little while. So
they lose Eovaldi after this year though.
They do, but for 2023, we have our current projection as Sale, Paxton, Whitlock, Pivetta, Bayo. Who knows who comes in behind them. Maybe you want one more guy, but
I'm not sure how many of those guys are starters though, with some of the end guys, but yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. True. So we'll see. But thanks for the question, Jeff. We appreciate it. Our next email comes from Alvaro. And he says, hi, it's not, he doesn't say hi. He has a hand waving emoji. Should G Duran start playing second base again? Would his prospect status be better if it turns out to be an average or better than average defender at second? And would he be better to have somebody who can play second, short, and left? Thanks. I mean, we've been asked this a number of times, Ian. I continually say no for the reasons we've said, which is he hasn't played the position in multiple years. And it's not like he's good in the outfield. He needs to work on getting good at one position.
Yeah, and there's zero chance he could play shortstop. I don't know why.
He didn't say short. Did I say short? He said second, center, and left.
Oh, you said short.
Sorry, second, center, and left.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say because he's never going to
play short.
I mean, in a vacuum, having a guy who can play more positions is obviously good, but I just think with Duran, the ship has sailed on the infield thing. Like, you very rarely see guys move back to the infield after being moved to the outfield full time. And I think that just with his athleticism is just wasted at second base. And I think that's why you moved him to the outfield in the first place, and nothing's changed with that. So I think it's kind of, the player he's going to be turned into is going to depend on what he becomes in the outfield and obviously at the plate. But I don't think the second base option is really on the table.
Mm-hmm. Our next email comes from Jordan. He says, hey guys, first off, big fan of the show and all of the hard work you do. I know a lot of the focus is on the rumored interest in Seiya Suzuki right now. However, what would you think of Nick Castellanos on a contract similar to what JD Martinez signed for in 2018, opt-outs or not? He could play some left field, then eventually slide into JD's role if they chose to let him go after this upcoming year. It would fit Heim's current desire for a right-handed hitter, and the thought of him launching baseballs over the Green Monster has to be extremely tantalizing. StatCat's numbers seem to back up his very good recent success dating back to his midseason trade to the Cubs. Again, appreciate all the work. Thanks, Jordan. Ian, I'll kick to you first on this one. I know we don't love the Castellanos fit here, and if you want to kind of get into that a little bit more, I think you've got more fleshed out thoughts on Castellanos's non-fit on this roster.
The Red Sox, they traded Hunter Renfroe because part of the problem was his defense in right field. And I just don't see any way they're going to make a trade or make a signing of someone who is worse than Renfroe defensively in right field. And I know the other argument would be, well, you put JD in left and you move Verdugo to right and you put Castellanos in DH. That just makes your defense worse also. Like Verdugo, I don't know what happened with him defensively last year, but he went from like an above average defender to a below average defender last year, which was very strange. But I think that it's pretty clear that Chaim Bloom and the Red Sox are going to prioritize a right field defense, because in Fenway Park, you need to. I mean, right field is massive in Fenway, and you need someone with speed out there. You need someone who's got a good arm. And unfortunately for Castellanos, those are not his strengths. And he can really hit, don't get me wrong. And if JD Martinez was not on this roster, I would say, yes, that's a very interesting fit. But Castellanos at the end of the day is best suited to be a DH, and they have someone locked in at DH for this year. So,
and I also don't know that I want to tie up. I also don't know that I want to tie up the DH spot long term again. You've got a potential situation with Casas coming up. If Dahlbeck is able to show in the first half of 2022 that he belongs in the major league lineup, you can use that DH spot with Dahlbeck, Casas, and Devers to move guys around. I don't love the idea of acquiring a full-time DH necessarily. Look, when the Red Sox signed JD Martinez, he was exactly what they needed. And right now, I don't think they're in a situation where they have one piece that they need to complete the puzzle, which is what Martinez was. And so I see the argument for Castellanos. I just don't know that he's a unique enough talent to do that. So I don't love the fit. Could they? Sure. But I think their first choice is definitely Seiya Suzuki. No question.
And I think, too, that if you're going to be going for a pure DH type, I still think that Kyle Schwarber's a better fit for what the Red Sox need, because they need a left-handed hitter, frankly. I think the lineup, I mean, if you look at it, what we have projected right now, Vasquez is a righty, Dahlbeck's a righty, Bogarts is a righty, Kike is a righty, JD is a righty. They need a left-handed bat to balance that out. And I think that Schwarber at least is passable in left field. Schwarber, you can put in the outfield, you can put him at first base, you can put him at DH, and just the left-handedness of him And the other thing I think that advantage Schwarber has is Schwarber walks a lot more. And for what they need in the lineup, I think they need another big OBP guy too. Whereas Castellanos, you're looking at a 6-7% walk rate. It's fine. It's not great. Whereas Schwarber, obviously, we saw the patience and kind of the approach he brought to the team last year and how it kind of rubbed off on some of the guys. And I think that's the type of player that if they're going to be making a big money signing to play, DH right field, that's the type of player they would be going after.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the email was referring to is after in that like 11th hour press conference before the lockout, Heim did say that the acquisition of Jackie Bradley did change the focus more from a left-handed hitter to a right-handed hitter. But that said, I mean, in our projections, we have holes at second and left.
Yeah, I
kind of have a mind to move Verdugo to left and call it a right fielder. But
yeah, and also I don't agree that. I mean, Jackie Bradley should not change what you think of what your lineup needs, in my opinion. But I mean, unless they're planning on running, which is why I think Suzuki makes the most sense because Suzuki can play right field. He's a good defender. He's a right-handed hitter. Bradley will be the fourth outfielder. He can platoon a little bit. They can also, platoon Arroyo with Bradley or with Verdugo when they want to give Verdugo a day off against, tough people like righties. Like they can figure all that stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, you could wind up with Bradley playing center and Kike playing second.
Exactly.
Yep. Cool. Well, thanks for the email. We appreciate it, Jordan. Our next email comes from Michael, and he says, Chris and Ian, I enjoyed your comments, and Chris, I enjoyed your comments in Chad Jennings' article, and I was curious if you both could discuss a depth issue not extensively discussed in his piece. Quick timeout. That was Chad Jennings of The Athletic wrote an article about how the depth in the minor league system has improved. So we talked a little bit about that. Check it out on The Athletic. But he says, what do you make of the Sox AAA catching situation? It seems like there may not be enough playing time to go around for both Connor Wong and Ronaldo Hernandez, and perhaps even Cole Cottom later in the year. Presumably the team has an interest in both Wong and Hernandez regularly catching and not just DHing. And if they split time, both of them would suffer from being behind the plate only 3 times a week. Thanks, Michael. Michael, the easy answer to your question is minor league catchers, especially this past year, were only catching 3 times a week, 4 times a week in the system. We saw that, for example, in Greenville, Cole Cottom and Eli Marrero were splitting time before Cottom got promoted. There was no level at which a guy was routinely getting 4 or 5 starts a week.
Yeah, you have plenty of room for 2 legit catchers, and frankly, they're going to have a third catcher at some point. It'd be like a Juan Centeno type. And with both Hernandez and Wong, and we saw it with Hernandez last year. I believe Hernandez DH'd a lot when he was in Portland.
He did, I think. Because in Portland they had Johnny Pareda.
Yeah, at the end of the year, they had Pareda, Cottom, and Hernandez were all there. So, yeah, I think that you'll see, there's plenty of playing time for both of them between catcher, DH. I think, did Hernandez play a little first base too, maybe? Or did I make that up?
A little bit.
I thought he played a game or 2.
A little bit. I'm pulling it up now. But, yeah, there's plenty of room for guys to, just pulling up each, for example, Portland last year. Looking at the catching playing time split. Because playing time split at catcher was as follows. Hernandez got 61 games. Pareda got 25. Cottom got 17. Baldwin got 12. Oscar Rangel got 5. And it seems like Hernandez got the lion's share, but it's basically Hernandez splitting with Pareda or Cottom, whoever was on the roster with him, because Pareda went up to AAA actually.
Yeah. And Hernandez had 30 games at DH in Portland and 1 game at first base.
Yep, exactly.
And then when he got promoted to Worcester, it was 5 games at catcher, 2 games at DH. And that was when Connor Wong, I believe, was on the taxi squad of the major league team. So
that sounds right.
There's plenty of room for 2 catchers at a level like that.
Yep, for sure. But like I said, thanks for the question because it allows us to explain that. Our next question comes from Austin, and he says, hey guys, assuming no major changes to CBA service time rules, how do you see Brian Mata's IL time playing out to start 2022? Will they hold out placing him on the 60-day IL for the additional 40-man space? Happy New Year, Austin. Just to explain to everyone what Austin is asking about, Brian Mata is, of course, on the 40-man roster. Because he got hurt early enough in spring training last year, they were able to option him to the minors and not keep him up on the major league roster, because usually when you get hurt while you are with the major league team, you have to go on the major league injured list. The reason you do not want Brian Mata to spend time on the major league injured list, yes, you could put him on the 60-day IL and get an extra spot back on the 40-man roster. However, that entire time, Mata would be accruing major league service time, getting him closer to arbitration and, more importantly, free agency. Last year, therefore, the Red Sox kept him on the 40-man roster, just ate the roster spot, and did not start his clock. I don't see any reason, Ian, why they wouldn't do the same thing this year. They clearly do not want to start his clock earlier than they need to. It's not clear what his stuff is going to be when he comes back. It's not clear he's going to pitch in the majors this year. It was different when they did this with Eduardo Bazardo, a major league ready, basically relief pitcher for whom service time is much less of a big deal. They put him on the 60-day IL for a certain amount of time. I think it was a couple months to get that roster spot back, especially because when I look at the 40-man roster right now, Ian, I still see plenty of guys who could be taken off of it. I could think of 3 right off the top of my head right now that I would have no qualms about cutting, not cutting, but this.
Well, and the thing is though, that they're going to make moves. They still have moves to make this offseason. So that's,
well, I think that's his point, is like, if you're going to sign 3 guys, you need 40-man spots.
But the problem is you can't 60-day Mata until like mid-March or the end of March. So
I think you can do it at the start of spring training now.
Oh, is it? I thought it was like several weeks in the spring training.
It used to be, but now I think you can do it right at the start of
the
spring
point
training.
Is they're not going to, they didn't do it last year. They're not going to do it for reasons.
Exactly. That's the answer. Correct. But thanks for the question, Austin. Our next email comes from Derek. He says, "Hi, Chris and Ian. My question is for both of you. Name one prospect that isn't high in the rankings, but is very intriguing. Preferably a guy outside the top 20 would be amazing. For me, a prospect that intrigues me is Ceddanne Rafaela, because he is great defensively and can play almost everywhere. So if the offense can develop, he can be a very valuable piece as a utility guy. Thanks and Happy New Year, Derek." I don't know about you, Ian, but Derek took my guy. So I'm going to take a second. Do you have anyone ready off the top of your head who you like? Let's go outside of the top 20 in the system.
What is the criteria? Just that I like?
Intriguing was the fairly nebulous criteria, but I guess you could say, I don't see much of a difference between that and pick a sleeper from outside the top 20, but I guess it's a favorite prospect you have outside the top 20 might be one way to look at it.
Well, I mean, this is cheating because I'm not going to, I would say Tyler McDonough, because I have him in my top 20, but he's not in the site's top 20.
Yeah.
But I won't do that.
I can do mine if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to go with right-handed pitcher, Luis Perales, who
that's a good one.
He's got probably the highest upside. He's ranked 46th in our rankings right now. He would be much higher, but for the fact that he didn't pitch this past year, based on reports, it's great. It's really intriguing stuff. He just has to get on the mound, and we have to see it. So he's a guy, I think. Look, if you told me next year at the end of the season, Luis Perales was a top 10 prospect, I would not laugh at you. I wouldn't bet on that. Top 20, very possible. If the reports on his stuff turn out to be true and he does that in the Florida Complex League, he's probably a top 20 prospect.
Yeah. I think a good one is actually someone who's right next to Perales in the ranking, and it's Eduardo Vaughn, the center fielder. And this is the, your quintessential high risk, high reward player. It's, I would say, the most projectable frame in the system, 6'4", 180. He looks the part. He can add a ton of strength. He's tooled up, but it's super raw, like sushi grade raw. And the question is, is he going to be able to? Is he going to be able to actually play baseball? Is a major question, because it's one thing to have loud tools and look the part. It's another thing to that translate into on the field success.
Translated to skills.
He showed some flashes last year. He actually walked a decent amount in the FCL, which was a little surprising. There was a ton of strikeouts too, but he showed some pop. His final line was 226, 362, 405, which is not great, but it's a first time stateside. It's okay. But scouts I talked to who saw that team were definitely impressed by him and thought that he's someone that, if everything clicks, there's a really high ceiling here. So he's someone I think that if he shows up and could rise really quickly if he impresses in minor league spring training, and then, gets that full season assignment.
Fair enough. I like that one. Honorable mention, Enderso Lira, ranked 32.
Yeah, honorable mentions. I was just going to use an excuse to talk about Jacob Wallace more.
Fair. Where we have him ranked right now, he's ranked 42nd.
Way too low. I would say another one. Lear is a good one. Edinson Paulino is another good one.
I think it's all of the guy. Basically, if a guy just came over from the Dominican complex, there's usually a lot of room for helium depending on what happens in the US. So that's kind of a cheap way to do that.
I would say if you're looking purely at stateside, I think Wallace is probably is a pretty good one. I like Wyatt Olds. Wyatt Olds is someone I think could move pretty quickly. He was a drafty last year.
Vic Santos, maybe.
Yeah.
Crawford. But Lugo. Yeah, I like Lugo.
But like Wyatt Olds, I don't know. I saw him last year. It's like 93 to 96 plus slider. He's a pure reliever to me, but I think, 7th round pick, if they just throw him in the bullpen, he could move pretty quickly up the system.
Our next email comes from Dylan, and he says, "Hi guys, wanted to know your opinion of the potential for a Rafael Devers extension. His bat is elite, but is a liability in the field." Don't know. I agree with that. Do you guys think that could impact the front office's decision to extend him, or do you guys think he could be valuable in a different position? Thank you for the amazing content, both on the Sox Prospects website and the insight from the podcast episodes, Dylan. Ian, before I let you go on this one, don't talk about the defense yet. There's a specific Xander Devers defense question in the mailbag. But to me, I signed Devers to an extension in a heartbeat. And I think, Chris Cotillo recently put out 10 predictions for the 2022 season article. And one of the ones in there was that either Bogaerts or Devers signs an extension before the start of the year.
I don't think there's any chance of Bogaerts signing an extension before the year.
And that's what I was going to say. I could definitely see Devers.
There's one reason why, and everyone knows who his agent is. Yeah. He doesn't do in-season extensions. It's like I would agree with Cotillo in the sense that I think they lock up Devers. I don't think they have a choice because
they have to.
And if I had to choose one between him and Bogaerts, I'm going Devers also in that regard. A lot of it is age driven. I mean, we're talking about Devers is 25 years old. Bogaerts is 29, going to be 30 next season. So if I'm giving long-term money, I'm giving it to Devers. But I mean, Devers is like the core player for the Red Sox going forward. And yeah, they need to lock him up, and it's going to be expensive. Like, there's no sugarcoating this, and they have to pay him. They cannot pull some stuff and, just let him run out his clock and then have to trade him or something. Like, he needs to get locked up to 10 years, $300 million, whatever the extension is necessary. I mean, what did Corey Seager get? 10, 3, 15?
I don't think 10, 30. I don't think 10, 300 gets it done. I think you need to give him probably,
I would say 10, 3, 30, something like what it's
something like that. Yeah. And actually, let me add the email to this, because we got another email from John. He says, "Chris and Ian, Sox fans have spent a ton of energy this offseason wringing their hands about the future of the left side of the infield. I personally don't think, quote, fixing, end quote, the infield defense by moving Bogaerts and or Devers is all that important in the short term. But it does seem likely that one or both will have to move within a couple of years. What positions do you think those two could potentially shift to when the time comes, assuming they both stay in the org? Xander to third and Devers to first/DH? Could either of them handle second base or an outfield corner? I'd love to hear where you think each player fits best based on their current defensive strengths and weaknesses. Thanks as always for the great work, John." I don't think it's a given Devers moves. I know he's not an all-star defensively, but everyone is ready to move him to first. And
I don't get it.
He's so young still.
He also has he's got a cannon too. You want to talk about a good arm? There you go.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a great arm. I mean, the kid's only 25. He turned 25 in October.
Well, and I think I don't understand his defense in 2019. He was an above average defender. Last year in 2020, it was not good. And we know, let's be honest, we know he was not in shape in 2020. That's anyone who watched the games could see that. Mm-hmm. He did not come prepared for the season. He was, out of shape. He struggled obviously offensively, and the defense did too. He was better defensively this year than last year. And he's not a butcher over there. I mean, if you look at Steamer projects him as to be about a neutral defender, average. Mm-hmm. And even if he's a tick below average, his bat is good enough that you keep him at third base.
Right.
Because I don't get the move Devers off third thing. Bogaerts is the bigger issue to me because he's going to want money. He's going to want to be paid like a shortstop. And
yeah,
I mean, I don't love him at shortstop.
Well, look at it this way, Ian. Where would you move him to? Let's
This
answer
is the
that
problem.
question first.
The answer is
It's
third.
third. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I could
this is the
see him
issue.
in left, but it's almost a waste in
But
left.
that's also harder. Like he's never played outfield. Moving a guy from
Yeah.
short to third is easy. Like that's
Yeah.
people do that all the time. And this is and the thing with also just like assuming that Devers is going to be a good first baseman, like I think people forget this. He's only like 6 feet tall. Like if I'm at first base, I want someone who's like 6'3", 6'4", or Tristan Costas like 6'6", 6'5".
Mm-hmm.
Like I want a big target over there. Like it's no given that Devers would be a good defensive first baseman. Like, so I don't understand why we're moving off a position where he's fine at to a position that he's never played before. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're going to do that, you just make him a DH, but at the same time, he might not want to be a DH. Like that you've seen that before with players. So it is an interesting dilemma, and why I think an underrated subplot of this season. I know Red Sox stats has kind of been trumpeting this or mentioned it a lot, that the Bogarts question is fascinating because there's no really good answer, because the places you would want to move to, you have people locked up there. And unless he can move to second, which maybe he can, but his athleticism is probably only going to get worse as he gets.
His issue isn't his arm.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's like we'll see what happens with him. But I mean, Bogarts to third would be the thing. But if he can, I mean, probably the best outcome would be if he can take over second and you sign a shortstop, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Exactly. So, I mean, it's not an easy question. This is the kind of tough question that they hired Chaim Bloom to answer. So it's, yeah, we'll see. Our next question comes from Mad Dog, who told us it is not Mad. Did he confirm it was Mad Dog, or that we were wrong for thinking it was Mad Dog? I forget. Anyway, he emailed to say, "Hey guys, I keep seeing rumors going around about how the Red Sox organization wants to bring back the Lowell Spinners. But what I'm not sure about is how that would work, as there isn't an open spot in our minors. So if they were to come back, how would it work and where would they be?" This question, so this is not based on any inside information or anything like that. We know that when the Spinners were one of the teams that lost their affiliation, I think even Sam Kennedy said that they want to bring baseball back to Lowell if they can, if there's a way to do it.
Correct.
The Red Sox. To me, there is one very obvious way to do that. Mm-hmm. Just looking at the farm system, the way the minor leagues got restructured, etc. The High A East, which is the league that the Greenville Drive play in, has two divisions.
Yes.
A South Division and a North Division.
Mm-hmm.
The North Division has 5 teams and the South Division has 7 teams, including the Drive. It seems fairly obvious that it would make a lot more sense for each of those divisions to have 6 teams. However, I think the way you do this, consider the fact that Greenville was promoted to High A and Salem was demoted to Low A. That's mostly because a lot of those teams moved that are in that kind of Carolinas area, mm-hmm. because the South Atlantic League Low A teams had better ballparks and were better organizations, to be completely frank, than the High A Carolina League teams and ballparks were. Right? Like more, I think more Carolina League teams wound up losing their affiliations than like South Atlantic League teams.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I mean, when you look at like the Aberdeen Ironbirds are in High A, they used to be in the New York Penn League, right? Yeah. I mean, Hudson Valley was in the New York Penn League. Brooklyn was in the New York Penn League.
Brooklyn was.
Yeah. Jersey Shore was in the South Atlantic League. Wilmington was High A.
Wilmington was
Rome
High A.
was in Low A.
Rome was Low A. Hickory was Low A.
Yeah, a lot of those teams got moved up. Greensboro was Low A.
Yeah. Bowling Green was High. No, Bowling Green was Low A. They were in
Bowling Green was Midwest, I thought.
Yeah, they were Midwest League, I thought. Yeah. No, they were Appy League. Weren't they Appy League?
No, they weren't Appy League.
Oh no, they were
Midwest.
They were Midwest League. Yeah, they were Midwest League. Yeah, so they were Low A too.
I think there are a lot, like the High A East is like mostly teams that used to be Low A.
Yeah, the only ones that were actually
promoted
high
because
A.
they were better. Like Fluor Field is a better ballpark than Lewis Gale Field in Salem.
Fluor Field is a better ballpark than Double A and Triple A parks I've been to. I'm not going to say which ones, but there's a lot of them. Fluor Field is one of the nicest parks in the minors.
Yeah. All that said, the very easy way you bring the Lowell Spinners back is you move Greenville back down to Low A, the Low A East.
Yep.
And you move Salem to Lowell.
And the thing with if you move Greenville back in Low A East works fine. You know, there's
geographically, you don't skip a beat.
There's 4 teams in North Carolina already. There's 4 teams in South Carolina, and there's 3 teams in Virginia in that league. Like, that's easy. And this is why Lowell doesn't make any sense in that league.
No, because they wouldn't be near anybody.
The closest team to Lowell, if they just replace Salem, is Delmarva. So that's not. And even in high A East, it's tough. Like,
no, but it isn't though.
It is. I mean, Aberdeen's pretty far, but the thing is, they already made that trip. Like, that was a trip that was already happening.
Their division would be Hudson Valley in like upper New York.
Yeah.
Brooklyn, Jersey Shore, Wilmington, Delaware, and Aberdeen.
Yeah.
They would have to travel a fair amount.
Yeah, no, it's still far, but it's doable. And it's frankly, as we said, it's mostly teams except for Wilmington and the Lakewood team. They've done those trips before. You know, they used to go to Aberdeen, they used to go to Hudson Valley, they used to go to Brooklyn. So,
yeah. And I mean, the thing is, well, the way you do it is, first of all, you've got a travel day every week now.
Yeah.
So it's not nearly as bad. You're not doing the Aberdeen drive overnight.
Yeah.
And you do a 3-series road trip. You play like Brooklyn on the way down, you go all the way down to Aberdeen, you play Jersey Shore on the way back.
Because they didn't even do interdivision games last season, did they?
No. They only did intra-division, exactly. And like, when you need to go all the way down to the Carolinas, then you fly. Like, yeah. Or maybe that league just doesn't do interdivision. Like,
well, that's my point, is they just might not do that. But that is like, the way
Bowling
you do it.
Green isn't near anybody. Like,
no. That is the way you would do it, is you move, is Greenville goes back to low A, Salem. And the other reason that it makes some sense is the owners.
They are owned, at least majority stake, if not 100% ownership, by Fenway Sports Group or an affiliate of Fenway Sports Group, depending on what you read online. But basically the Red Sox ownership controls the Salem Red Sox. So it is easy for them to move them. There are a couple of things. If there are minority owners, that might be a part of them waiting. And there's also the fact that the Salem Red Sox have a stadium lease that goes through 2024. They signed a 10-year lease announced in 2015 at the beginning of the year. So it will expire after the 2024 season. I could see that being a point that they are waiting for, but it seems like that's how they could do it. Well, it's tough to talk about because there are people who work for the Salem Red Sox that would not move to Lowell. Right. So it's tough. Well, I don't love speculating about this, but like,
and the other thing, the other thing you do need to remember with Lowell is that like they would have to make substantial improvements to the ballpark and fun figuring out who's paying for that is likely, if it does come to fruition, would be a logistical nightmare, because you're going to have to run into the public versus privately funded stadium debate again. And we don't need to rehash that, but since it's been done in the media a million times, but you know, that ballpark is not good enough to be a high A ballpark.
No,
which is what it would have to be. So it would need substantial improvement.
It needed improvements to be a low A team. If that was on the table. It needs a lot of construction to be done. That's part of why it's going to take a while to get another team in there, because for LeLacheur Park to host a full season team, a substantial amount of work will need to be done on that park, and add in the complications of UMass Lowell, which like is not a impossible thing to get.
It's also not a unique case. I mean,
no, there are other teams that share their,
but it is logistically an issue that they share it with the college team, and there's a lack of parking, especially when school's in session. Like there are some other issues that would have to be figured out. But
so there's a lot. I think
there are issues there. If it is going to happen, and who knows at this point, it's years, it's not in the imminent future. I would say it would be several years down the road.
Yeah. And I mean, look, would the Boston Red Sox love to have their high A team close by as well as their double A and triple A teams? You bet. Like that adds possibilities for rehabbing guys. That adds possibilities for getting the front office out to see players. You know, and the thing is, I don't think the Greenville affiliation is going anywhere. That is a model minor league franchise.
I don't think so either.
No chance they lose that affiliation.
If it switch happened, it would be Salem, but I mean, it's all speculation at this point.
Yeah. I mean, Greenville's got an airport right there in Charlotte that it's like a couple hour drive from. Like
about an hour. Greenville Spartanburg is bigger than the Roanoke Airport. So
not much. Yeah. Roanoke Airport has been too.
Yeah. Greenville's a lot easier logistically to get to. To get to Salem, I had to fly through Charlotte, whereas to get to Greenville, I just fly to Charlotte and drive. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it's a fair question, and that's why we wanted to approach it. So Our next question comes from David. He says, Tristan Casas appears ready to make the jump to the MLB roster. And I was curious who you see as the next prospect ready to make that jump in 2021 or 2022. Also, Jarren Duran looked overmatched at the MLB level. And what do you see his greatest needs for improvement are in order to get back to the MLB level? We kind of talked about that. Thanks as always for the great content on the podcast and website. Thank you, David. Ian, I think it depends on what make the jump means, because frankly, there might be guys more ready than him. I mean, looking at the AAA roster, the names that stick out are Duran, Casas, Connor Wong on the offensive side. And then on the pitching side, it's Crawford.
I would not lump Connor Wong in with those other guys. I don't see
backup. I could see him backing up.
Yeah, it's a backup. I don't think that's like.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What's the jump?
The jump to me is becoming an everyday person. It's not becoming like
everyday,
or like a substantial contributor. Like
right.
Connor Wong, best case,
like a one WAR at least player.
Yeah, well, Connor Wong to me is like a fungible backup catcher. Like I just don't see the ceiling there.
So, and I mean, I guess you could say Downs if he figures it out. Is there, but he's got a lot to figure out is the other thing. I mean, he was a guy who we thought might be in pencil as the start opening day second baseman this year.
The answer is Casas. Let's.
Well, no, he said other than Casas.
Oh, okay.
After Casas.
Well, the answer is Casas. So, and after him, I don't think there's anyone. Like
there's no one I would bet money on coming up and being a one WAR player.
No. Like,
and that's assuming we're not counting Duran, because he's already been up for a substantial amount of time, but
yeah,
it's different.
But I also I just don't see a pathway for Duran right now. Like, I think he's going to start in the minors, and even if he hits his way up to the big leagues, that'd be great. That's what they're going to be looking for.
And then in Portland, the guys you're looking at are pitchers on that projected roster. I think the Bayos, Murphys, and Grooms of the world, rather than offensive.
I mean, Bayo would be the one, I think, because Bayo could be, I think, an impact reliever. He has the highest ceiling of all those guys. If they were to need someone, late in the season to come up, pitch and relief, he's the only one I think has kind of like late inning stuff of the guys that would be considered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Here's an email from Patrick. He says, "Good morning, guys. A little long. Apologies. When the lockout ends, I think the Red Sox should trade Devers. I'm a personal trainer and my eyes tell me he will put on weight and become less athletic, injured, and not worth a long-term contract. Instead, trade him and JD Martinez for prospects and become a top 5 system. Then extend Xander Bogaerts and move him to third base. Sign Trevor Story to a pillow contract. Sign Kyle Schwarber and Seiya Suzuki. Thoughts? Thanks and Happy New Year, Patrick." Ian, I don't love that.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I see what he's saying, that Devers is certainly a mesomorph body type.
Yeah, but I don't understand why you'd want to trade a 25-year-old to extend a 29-year-old.
Yeah, I don't either.
That just doesn't make any sense.
Trevor Story's not signing a pillow contract, I don't think. And even if he does, I don't see.
You're not. I don't think you're giving up a pick either to sign someone to a pillow contract.
No. And trading. I don't see what JD Martinez has a ton of trade value.
Yeah,
this offseason, he's a 1-year guy.
If you're gonna be discussing trading someone, you should be discussing trading Bogaerts, not Devers, because at the worst case, you have Devers for 3 more years already. Worst case, even if you don't sign him up long term, Bogaerts is, let's be honest, he's going to be a free agent after this year. Like, he's opting out. That's a lock. So I mean, if you're going to be discussing trading, I mean, you discuss trading Bogaerts, and they're not going to do that. So or at least I don't think they're going to do that. So I don't think that that's the type of moves that we will see happen, especially too, is that's something you need a full off season to flush out. If you're going to go that strategy, that's not something you can pull off in like the 2-week sprint they're going to have before the start of the regular season, or just before the start of spring training, which is when the lockout ends. That's likely what it's going to be. It's going to be like, the moratorium for free agency opens in 3 days, and then teams have 2 weeks to build their rosters. Like, it's going to be a whirlwind tour. We're probably going to be like emergency podcasting every night. So yeah,
fair. Our next email, Ian, comes from Will, and he says, "Hi, good afternoon. Hope all is well. Which prospects from the DSL are you excited to see make their US debuts in the FCL later this year? Best regards, Will." I think we named a few of these guys, Ian. It seems we're hearing it might be a fairly large contingent of guys coming up from the Dominican to Fort Myers this year.
That kind of makes sense though, because if you look at their drafts, like they didn't draft many late round high schoolers. Like, a lot of the guys they drafted are just, later round college guys who likely will go straight to will go straight to
Salem.
low A. And then you look, the year draft before that was a 5-round draft. So from like
no
the US side of things, you don't have many of those,
Well, and all the undrafted free agents were college seniors who were old.
Exactly. So you don't have many like young stateside, coming from the draft players to go for the complex league. So to fill those out, you're going to have to use guys coming from the Dominican. So yeah, I think will be a sizable class coming over.
And the top names coming up, I mean, the top guys we have ranked are center fielder Miguel Blaze and catcher Anderson Lira. A couple other names to keep in mind are center/right fielders Juan Chacon and Joe Stinkson Garcia. I think shortstop John Frank Salazar might be coming up. On the mound, you've got guys like Jedrickson Paez, Yordani Monegro, Giancarlos Reyes.
Perales, Cesar Ruiz are two of the better ones down there.
Francis Hernandez. There's going to be a pretty sizable.
Gabriel Jackson throws pretty hard. Actually, no, he was in the FCL this year, I think.
Yeah, Gabriel Jackson was in the GCL.
Yeah. Alan Castro, he's another one who
outfielder.
He can hit a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, they got some interesting guys.
They've got some very interesting guys coming up, and we'll certainly be covering that when they do. But to see the list, you can check out our 2022 projections. If I'm looking at them quickly for the FCL, have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I mean, I guess, of course, because we don't know who the guys getting drafted this year are yet. 18, 19, 20, 20. Yeah, 20 guys on the FCL roster coming up, which is a pretty large DSL. And I guess it's actually might get called the Dominican Republic Complex League, or the DRCL, which James on the ownership here at the site has insisted we refer to as the Dirkle. But it's a large contingent coming up. Our next question comes from Tim, and he says, Happy New Year to you both. It seems like Duran's weakness is high heat. Can you think of a prospect who had the same struggle and then overcame it? Dahlbeck seems to have the same weakness, and the jury, I believe, is still out whether he will be able to handle high velocity. Thanks, Tim Harding. Ian, anybody come to mind for you on a player who was, I mean, knowing the fact that they specifically could not handle high fastballs, then suddenly being able to is kind of a very specific sort of thing.
There is one, and he's on the Red Sox.
Okay.
Rafael Devers last year.
Oh, good call.
You remember the Astros decided we're only going to throw you high fastballs, and then he learned how to hit high fastballs as the season went on.
Right. Yep,
yeah.
And that's what makes him a special hitter.
That's what I was about to say. That's the difference, though, between like him and those guys. Is Devers has like the elite bat speed and hand speed to be able to figure that stuff out. Like it's a difficult thing to overcome for a lot of guys. The ones who can make that jump are the truly special hitters, and that's what I'm just not sure that Dahlbeck or Duran have that ability, whereas Devers I was thought did.
All right, and our final email today, Ian, comes from Daniel, and he says, "Hello, sorry if you've talked about this before. I'm a new subscriber. Who is your favorite Red Sox prospect you've covered coming up the ranks? It also seems like I'm almost alone on the Tanner Houck as a future ace train. Why does everyone see him as a long reliever? That we already talked about that earlier in the episode. Thanks, and you guys are awesome." Daniel, thanks for the email, Daniel. Favorite prospect you've covered coming up the ranks? I think this is just kind of as Baseball America would refer to it, our former Baseball America editor-in-chief, John Manuel. I think the term was personal cheese ball, or I think that was a John Manuel phrase. Who was your kind of personal cheese ball, Ian? Who was the guy who was your favorite coming up? And if you need a second to think about it, I can name.
I need a minute.
A couple of mine. I mean, I loved Xander Bogaerts coming up. Just the idea of a potential all around above average shortstop who could be a really special MVP caliber player was, I really liked him coming up. He might be my favorite. I was a big Clay Buchholz guy when he was coming up. I charted every one of his home starts in Pawtucket as he was coming up. Not once he got sent back down, but he only made like 4 home starts. But I charted each of them, and he seemed like a guy who, with 4 pitches, was a future Cy Young candidate. I swear. I think he was ranked in the top, if not 5, 10 on Baseball America. Baseball America's top 100 prospects at one point. The fact that not only did it not work out, but like that he needed a completely different arsenal in the major leagues was a wake up call for me, because, you know, he had 4 distinct pitches that to me seemed like were all average to better. It looked like 3 above average to plus pitches. You know, the fact that he didn't become a stud in the major leagues was stunning to me. I thought he was headed for greatness and it didn't pan out, but I love those 2 guys. And maybe, you know, a little, I mean, I also liked Josh Reddick as he was coming up as an outfielder with power and a big arm. I really liked following his career in the low minors and high minors as well, but he really caught my attention early as a guy that I really latched onto as a favorite. How about you, Ian? Who are some guys that you've really been a fan of coming up?
Well, I mean, from like the obvious, like no duh category, Devers, I thoroughly enjoyed watching hit.
I probably need to mention him too, given how great he always hit when I used to see him. But yeah,
when the sound the ball made coming off his bat was different than a lot of guys. And I just remember seeing him for the first time and kind of watching him hit. And it was just kind of some out of body experience watching him take BP in the low minors.
Oh, I thought of another one too.
This is a random one of the kind of like the sleeper guys that I was always a fan of, that I am pretty happy with how they've turned out, is Jalen Beeks.
Okay.
You know, it's just I undersized lefty, but I just thought the improvements he made, you know, once he signed and once he was in the system were pretty impressive, and he's turned into a pretty valuable, you know, obviously before he got hurt, he turned into a really valuable major league pitcher. And I think that's a pretty impressive outcome for someone who was obviously he was a 12th round pick, signed for like 125K or 150K. But he was someone I always liked watching pitch and kind of enjoyed following his progression throughout the system.
I thought of 2 more guys that I should mention. And one is I can't believe I forgot about this, was Jose Iglesias. Watching Jose Iglesias play defense is my favorite thing I have done on this website. I would have paid money to watch AA Jose Iglesias take infield. It was that entertaining. It was, I mean, I think at the time we used the term baseball porn. It was just unbelievable. Quickest hands I've ever seen. But I can't believe we haven't mentioned Big Joe Davis. I mean, come on. As far as entertaining guys in the system, watching Big Joe Davis play is fun, man. I mean, he's a fun guy to watch.
That year in Lowell, that last season in Lowell was a heck of a run. But he was like hitting walk-offs and like back-to-back games in the playoffs and stuff like that. Was a lot of fun to follow. Yeah,
so he's a fun guy too for current guys. You know, may or may not be a future major leaguer, but certainly entertaining and fun. But that's a great question. Thanks for the question. And that wraps it up. Again, it's podcast@soxprospects.com is the email. Hit us up. We'll answer your questions here on the show. Thanks for the huge mailbag. We appreciate it. And I think with that, we will wrap this up in let's get to our Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter @SoxProspects is the site account. @Ian Cundall is where you can follow Ian. That's IANCUNDALL. And follow me @SP_Chris_Hatfield. Follow us on the website, SoxProspects.com. It's not just a podcast. Go to the website. We've got our roster projections and things like that. James just wrote up our top articles, top posts on our news page from 2021, as well as the top podcast episodes by download. So for everyone to be able to check that out. And of course, you can support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. And as always, we want to give a shout out to our $5 level Patreon supporters. That list includes Kyle C., Tyler Woodrow, Jeff Trainer, David Nardone, Tim Harding, Bill Stanton, Deb Kendall, Evan Kirkwood, Hurricanes 1, Chris Fox, James O'Hara, Nathan Kenyon, Andrew Rollin, David B., Ben Burnett, Al Mendel, Kevin Catrides, Ben NRI, Paul Denyer, Lendl Martin, Cassandra Bukta, James P. McMahon, Stephen Gregory, James Bailey, Andreas Goldstrand, Corey Perrick, Forrest Perkins, Mark Herman, Aaron Meta, Jeff Harwood, Jimmy Mountain, Brian Cowan, Dusty G., Pavel, Jordan Shabbat, Jeffrey Scruggs, Nicholas Staropoli, Bob Introne, Mike Kawano, Chris Bollier, Curtis Waltman, Michael Stewart, Keith Fox, Caleb Farron, John Kane, Andrew K., Tim Ware, Michael Murphy, and Kyle Sanborn. Thank you all for your support. For Ian, I'm Chris, signing off. Thanks for listening, everybody.